All right, y'all. Well, so first, I also want to say the partnerships that we have with really amazing organizations making a difference in culture and community, like Mainstream Kent and Kent Area Chamber of Commerce, and then also partners like the Kent State University Hotel that see themselves as a convener and a leader in communities makes such a big difference. So please make sure that you are following these organizations online, paying attention to the ways in which they're creating opportunities for you to connect and make a difference. Definitely encourage you all to drop any links in the chat of things that are coming up. It's a busy Rainbow weekend. We also have Leadership Portage County here joining us today, another change maker in the area. So you can do some rainbow fun activities, and you can also go drink beer at the beer festival that's happening, which is a fundraiser. And these are important things for us to show up to. I know at both events, however you get in and fit in and however you identify, you're going to find a place of belonging and you're going to make some new connections. So please take advantage of these organizations that are here. Let me just find my little cursor button. You got to love when you're recording and you can't remember how to work on PowerPoint. So in case you're not familiar with Plexus, we're the LGBT and Allied Chamber of Commerce. We cover an area of all of Northeast Ohio. We really show up wherever we can for our members. Our membership base is actually, we have people who are professional or organizational members as far south as Cincinnati and Columbus. We're a part of a network of LGBT chambers across the country, but there's only 53 of us. So if you think about the nonprofit landscape, there's hundreds of thousands of nonprofits. There's thousands, tens of thousands of LGBTQ focused nonprofits. But those of us that are working in this intersection around identity and LGBTQ needs, building allyship and business in the Chamber of Commerce world, there's only 53 of us. So we feel really honored to be in this space and doing this work. There's lots of ways to get in and fit in with us. I know that we have some of our members on here, and you could ask them. So you can ask Justin and Tristan. They'll spill the tea on me, and I think they have good things to say about Plexus and me. We also have our education foundation that we founded in 2008. That's what brings me here today. We found ourselves in a unique place in the early 2000s where large companies like KeyBank and Progressive were inviting us into the boardroom to help them think about how do we have a more inclusive corporate culture when marriage equality, that basic thing, isn't something that is happening at a federal or state level. So we found ourselves in these unique places of being able to connect best practices, advise and consult, and then being called in again and again to lead LGBTQ plus diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings. So we lead on average about 60 trainings per year. We're available to create a suite of trainings and educational opportunities, and we have some that you can connect with. Just yesterday, I had the fortune of being over at JM Smucker. We did a panel discussion and we talked about the importance of visibility and National Coming Out Day. And then also a National Coming Out Day, we were over at Oswald Company. So these might be names that you recognize, and we're there to support them. So today, what we're really trying to focus on is thinking a little bit about some basics of how to create inclusive cultures in a smaller business or nonprofit organization. Most likely, I'm not going to get into some of the very specifics around inclusive benefits or employee handbooks or other best practices around onboarding, orientation, or recruitment. We're going to water ski over these. Also, because we're a bit limited on time, I'm not able to go into all the different language and culture that encompasses the LGBTQIA community. Of course, if you have those questions, you can drop them into the chat. And as we have time, I'll be able to break down some of like this language that you might not be as familiar with, or you have questions with. But just to level set a bit, like, who are we? You know, I think it's really important to pay attention to the way that we are your friends and neighbors. We've always been a part of communities, and we're actually a growing number in the population. One of the things that is happening here when you see these poll numbers change is we are making progress in the American society around acceptance, especially for lesbian, gay, and bisexual folks. So around orientation, understanding that orientations outside of opposite gender loving or heterosexual or straight relationships are totally normal and acceptable. That means that when you ask us about ourselves, or when we're working with you in your workplaces or showing up on your board of directors, we're going to be more likely to be out and open about who we are. So we see that 7.2% of US adults identify as LGBTQ or something other than heterosexual. This actually is probably a little bit closer to 10%, but it's a little bit hard to have really solid numbers on us because we're often not surveyed or asked. When you fill out a lot of forms, you're asked about your race, maybe your socioeconomic status, if you're a veteran, your gender. You do not see consistently and in broadly encompassing check boxes asking if I am a member of the LGBTQ community or how I might identify, let alone if my gender identity is something outside of being cisgender, let alone if I identify as transgender or non-binary. But consistently, what we are seeing is the younger generations, Gen Z and millennials, are increasingly identifying as a member of the LGBTQ community. And especially within Gen Z is a more expansive understanding of gender. So outside of this binary of just man or woman, gender expansive concepts of gender identity, like gender expansive, gender nonconforming, non-binary, transgender, etc. I'll also be sharing our follow-up materials to send you all some worksheets on this language and this culture, since I can't go all the way into explaining the difference between orientation and gender identity. Also, when we're talking about business, it's important to be talking about money, y'all. We have money to spend. Conservative estimates suggest that in America, we have about $1.4 trillion in our spending power. Here's something else that's really important to think about. Our allies like to shop with businesses and support causes that are in alignment with supporting their loved ones, which are us, right? So not only do we as lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, gender queer folks have money to spend and invest, and we're looking to support businesses that are outwardly supporting us and making it possible for us to be visible and thrive in our communities. So does my mom, right? So does my grandma, so does my sister, Samantha, especially. And then also it's important to keep in mind that we are business owners ourselves. We're entrepreneurs. We do face certain challenges because of marginalization and discrimination. And still, we are thriving and we are driving in the economy forward with at least 2 trillion yearly that we are contributing to the economy. And when we categorize that, it's around hiring, right? Investment back in, it's in development, it's in the taxes that we pay. Unfortunately, when we look at our experiences, while we have had a wonderful arc of change, especially after marriage equality became just normal in 2015, we have a greater level of visibility, especially around orientation. That same acceptance and understanding is an upward battle for our transgender and non-binary friends and family members. But even with all this greater acceptance and polling, we are still seeing that half of LGBTQ adults report experiencing some kind of workplace discrimination or harassment. This can be straight up discrimination and harassment that's really to your face, very obvious, something you can really touch. It can also be things like, oh, I don't know why you have to make such a big deal about pride, or if I talk about my wife, somebody could say something like, oh, I don't think we should talk about that at work. It could be offhanded compliments like, oh, you don't look like a lesbian, or you're so pretty for a transgender woman. It can be those kind of bias, unconscious microaggressions to being specifically turned over, overlooked for promotion, pushed out of your position in really toxic environments. We're also, another thing to keep in mind is with marriage equality, it was a wonderful gain for us, but it did not provide equal protections in areas of housing or public accommodations, right? So a huge thing of what we are concerned about when we're moving through our communities is, will this person sell me a house? Will I be able to rent this home or get a lease agreement on this location for my small business? Because you can, in the state of Ohio, unless there's an ordinance in place, say no to me just based on my identity. We're the only group of people that you can still do that legally, and I have no recourse or protection. The other thing is when we're coming into your establishments, many times we're just looking for cues of what my experience will be like here, because you can deny me service, again, unless there's that ordinance in place. whether it's a latte or it's a doctor's office. This is the kind of thing that we are constantly worrying about. And so then, of course, what we do sometimes is we code ourselves. We avoid talking about what we did over the weekend. If it's going to out us, we might not say the name of the bar or the restaurant that we went to if people know that it's like a gay location. We might talk about our partners in a gender neutral way, or just really avoid talking about our personal lives. And then also all of this, what does it do? It creates a lot of turnover. Turnover is expensive. If you're involved in any kind of people management, you know that it's like it costs for every turnover, I think it costs you 6 times as much as keeping that employee on salary, just because of the extra work, the onboarding, changes in salary, all this different stuff. So 2 million American workers, we're leaving our jobs. We're finding different places to go. So that could also be, especially when you're working in hiring younger or gender expansive people, or even elders, you might see a lot of movement on our resume that could be a red flag that we don't stay, or that there's something wrong with our workforce development, when in fact it could be that we couldn't find places to work that would accept us for who we are, or that were safe for us. So it's something to keep in mind. Again, the really great thing is when we poll the American people, there's broad support for laws forbidding LGBTQ discrimination. 80% of Americans support such laws, and we even see this carry over through in more conservative areas of the American population. 66% of Republicans and at least 50% support on major religious demographics. Unfortunately, this dips a bit when we start to talk about gender identity and allowing affirming care, access to restrooms, teaching about trans and LGBTQ folks in general in education. So we can't get too much into those. But when we're just looking at supporting laws that forbid discrimination, we are seeing overwhelming support. We're also seeing support from small businesses to say, yeah, I think we should talk openly about the communities and causes that we believe in, that we should be outward about that. We should hang pride flags. We should work to have inclusive environments. 72% of these small business owners say they're okay with losing customers if they take a stand to support LGBTQ equity and equality. And I always include my sources here. These sources about small businesses is coming from the US Chamber of Commerce. They do pulse surveys. So, and the other things that you're seeing here are for Center for American Progress, Gallup, and Forbes, all very reliable parts of information and resources. So I'm just going to talk a bit about this. As I said, we don't have federal protections. When you think about the fact that you cannot discriminate against Amanda as a lesbian woman because of my gender or my race, religion, creed, ethnicity, veteran status, or ability, unfortunately, nowhere in there does it say explicitly sexual orientation or gender identity. So it leaves a gap open upon which you can discriminate against me based on my sexual orientation. We've had some precedent at the Supreme Court level that says, hey, in the workplace, Title VII or that category of sex, it's broadly interpreted to mean gender identity, so transgender, non-binary, gender expansive, or orientation. That's a Supreme Court precedent, and that can change. And there can be executive orders that come out that encourage or disallow that kind of acceptance. So what happens is it has to happen at a state level, and Ohio is not one of those states where we've codified this into law with the Fairness Act, which has been up like 8 times for consideration, or changed our constitution. So it puts the work on local localities to pass LGBTQ anti-discrimination ordinances. These are the 36 localities. Yay for Kent for being one of these localities. We so appreciate that. And I share this to say it's important for you to think about where is your organization located and what might be the experiences of your LGBTQ stakeholders, customers, or employees, and why your work to be out, proud, and inclusive internally, and then also sharing that externally, really matters to us, because we are navigating a whole patchwork of different levels of protection and experiences that we might have from one street, one neighborhood to another. We're not always sure how we're going to be received. So I talked a bit about this way that we might code ourselves or like not be open in the workplace as a way of protecting ourselves as LGBTQ people. So what does the cost of the closet look like? You might be familiar with this idea of coming out or the closet. And a part of what this is that, there's a closet behind me. I don't live in it, obviously. But coming out is not just like a big billboard, I don't always get like glitter and unicorns and drag queens to welcome me out. It's usually a very long process, or just a process where we're talking with our friends, and then we're out at college, we're out with our friends, but maybe at work we're a little more reserved or we're not out. It also happens for us like all the time. Like when I get in the back of an Uber at 12:30 and the Uber driver's like, oh, what time are you getting in? I said, yeah, my poor wife has to pick me up at 4 a.m. And the Uber driver says, well, you don't look like a lesbian. And in that moment, I understand what they're saying. It's because I looked kind of straight passing, I'm not masculine presenting. So it's coming into these stereotypes of what lesbians look like. And in that moment, is it a backhanded compliment? Is he now really uncomfortable with me? Am I in danger? And so then I make a joke about it. And I say, well, don't worry, my wife does. I'm making a joke because she's a butch lesbian, as if she does look like a lesbian into that stereotype. But many of us have found ourselves, whether it's around race, ability, our accents, we kind of make a joke that eases it for that other person. And you're just hoping that that allows you to exist in that space. So how might this show up for you in your workplaces? When we think about small talk, it's really important, right? Humans are coded to look for things that are similar and where we can feel a sense of belonging. Like I wear glasses, so I'm constantly looking at other people's glasses. That's a nice, easy way to get a conversation going, or maybe I really want to know where you found those glasses. So often in small talk in our workplaces, we're sharing about our personal lives. And this can be like, 480 in the springtime when all the potholes show up. Everything in that conversation might be going fine. And then all of a sudden it gets really awkward, or the other person gets upset, or you're overwhelmed and you're upset and you're just looking for a way out of that conversation. It could, like, the tire just blows up right there. It could be that when you hit that pothole and like a week later your tire is flat in your driveway. So maybe it's that I'm not as warm to you anymore, or I asked to be taken off your project, or I don't sit at lunch with you. And you can't even figure out like what happened. Why is Amanda not like to talk to me? And it could be because we might have ways that we make assumptions, we ask questions, we respond in ways that don't make people feel like they belong. So how this might look, it's the weekend. You're asking me what I did over the weekend. I have my coffee, I'm loving my job, this battery, I'm fully charged, right? But then you ask me what I did over the weekend. As a queer person, I'm having to think, did I open up to this person? And like, how did that go? And if you got it and you were fine, and you know that I have a girlfriend and there was no problem along it, maybe you even let me know how you show up in allyship because you went to Pride or something like that. I'm going to tell you that I surprised my girlfriend with a train ride weekend in Philly. So I told you not only about my partnership, but that we went on a train and we went to Philly and it was their birthday. I told you 4 different things that we can now connect with. You love Philly too. Oh, the last time you were on a train was when you were 12. And we're just flowing. My energy is up and we're just feeling like really connected. But then if I haven't, maybe I'm not all the way out at work. Maybe I haven't told anybody. Maybe I've just told my desk mate that I feel really close with. Then you can see my battery starts to go. I'm ruminating. Well, what do they know? Or did I tell them and it was awkward? Or they said, oh, and they stopped talking to me, or we don't talk about that here. I'm going to code. I'm going to step a little bit away into that closet. I'm going to say, oh, I just went to Philly with a friend. I'm not going to talk about my relationship in its fullness. I'm going to code it and say friend. I might be neutral when I talk about my partner or my spouse, not because those are the words that work best, but because I'm trying to hide the gender identity of my partner so you don't know I'm in a same sex relationship. You ask me another question, oh, what, for any special reason? And I'm just like, no, Kurt, moving it along. This can happen in interviews too. And when you're trying to interview for a job, it's like those little things. It's, a lot of times you say, oh, I really liked them, or it was a gut check, or I feel like they're a good fit here. There's all these different ways that we could really open up, and we just make these decisions based on how we kind of feel about somebody. And if I'm not totally at ease, if I'm a little bit like buttoned up and reserved and nervous inside, you're not getting a full feel for me, and then I also might be having to think about like what you might think you assume about me. So this is what it can feel like for us. So how are some ways that we can think about small talk, whether it's customer service, with our colleagues, when we're taking in clients and whatnot, we can ask more open-ended questions, right? So I often encourage people to not assume the gender of somebody's partner. If you know that they're partnered, tell me what your partner does. If you know that I'm married, what is your spouse doing today, or what are you and your spouse doing this weekend? Then you can listen for what language I use, what pronouns I use, and then you can shift accordingly. Or if I say wife, then you can start to say, use wife. I often encourage people to avoid asking people about children, or if they want to have children, for a couple of reasons. Um, as women, a lot of times we get a lot of pressure on if we have children, do we want children, all that different thing. And this can be complicated for people for a lot of reasons. Maybe you're going through a difficult divorce and it's a contested child custody case. Maybe you lost a child recently. Maybe you don't want to have children and you're tired of having to justify that. Maybe you lost, or maybe you're not able to conceive. Maybe you're going through an arduous adoption process, right? All these different things. For us in the LGBTQ community, for older generations, having a family was not an option. It just wasn't an option. Maybe for us, our relationships are a little complicated. I had a child when I was with a man, but now I'm in a lesbian relationship and he calls us both moms, and sometimes people give us weird looks. And so we don't know how to be open about our family. So with children, what I encourage people to do, if you want to know, or it's kind of coming up in conversation, I often encourage people to think about, do you have young people in your life? That allows somebody to say, yeah, my goddaughter is really important to me. It allows people to fill in the blank. If you're meeting or you see adults with children, instead of like asking the child, oh, is this your mom or your dad? Because you could be getting the gender wrong of the person that's with them. You can be making the wrong assumption about who that person is. This isn't just for queer folks. This could be for intergenerational families. Maybe the grandparents are there and they're the guardian and custodian. And now they have to explain, oh, that's not my mom, that's my grandma. So instead, you can ask young people, who are the grown-ups with you today? You can ask grown-ups, oh, who are these young people with you? And then you allow us to fill in that blank there. And this is also, again, really inclusive of intergenerational families, multi-generational families, divorced, blended, adopted families, all these different kinds of ways, okay? All right, so now we're gonna shift a little bit into thinking about, that's our experiences, level setting who we are, why this is important. Now we're just going to do that water skiing over some simple steps that you can do within your organization to ensure that you're going to retain the talent, that is within the LGBTQ community, or ways in which you can inform and celebrate with the community that you want us to do business with you. One moment, sorry, I'm going to have to cough here. Okay. Enacting LGBTQ inclusive non-discrimination policies is like the base level. Because we're not that federally recognized class, being explicit in saying sexual orientation and gender identity, because gender identity is noting that you are welcoming and affirming, or at least taking steps to be for transgender and non-binary people. So the policy is great. We know policies have not stopped racism from happening, right? It's been 1964 since we've had this legally on the books that you need to treat folks equally based on race, and we still have racism. So your policy is one point. Then we're going to start to think about the nuances of what that policy looks like, how you implement it, and what your culture is like. We can consult with you on very, very deep steps of like what it looks like. So I'm just going to go over the overview here. Take steps to recruit and retain us. I'll have a little bit more of a slide on that. Think about your handbooks and your bylaws. So do your handbooks have things that are gendered? Are you using he/she? One, nobody talks like that ever. I'm never like he/she could be a viable candidate if. So avoid that in your policies. 1 second, sorry. Or in your bylaws. Just use they. They can be neutral. They can be inclusive of one person or a group of people, right? Reconsider your dress code policies. Sometimes our policies are really gendered in ways that they don't have to be. And if they are gendered in those ways, it can make it very challenging for somebody who's non-binary, somebody who's transgender, or somebody who doesn't fit these norms of what the binary is about earrings and length of hair and what dress codes are. So think about what you are trying to communicate to your employees around common sense dress code policies. Make them neutral where you can. And then as you are enforcing dress code policies, ensure that you're doing that equally. If somebody dresses more feminine or more masculine than you think they might because of their gender identity, check what that assumption is. So I think about this with my wife, for instance, whereas I am very feminine and femme presenting, she is masculine presenting. She enjoys wearing masculine clothes. That's what makes her feel the most comfortable and the most expressive about her gender. Even though she is a cisgender woman, she is a woman identified. So when she shows up in business casual wear, she's going to wear like a 3-button collared suit and khakis. That's what she's going to wear. It's going to be a more masculine presenting business casual. She's been written up for that before at organizations that were led by LGBTQ people, if you can even believe it. Well, meanwhile, her other female colleagues, it was summertime and they were wearing capris and sleeveless shirts, even though you weren't supposed to wear sleeveless shirts. They were wearing more feminine attire and they were not getting written up. So we want to pay attention to these dress code policies. Restrooms are a big deal for us, unfortunately. I hate when I'm talking about gender identity or things around the LGBTQ community that I'm talking about bathrooms, because who wants to use a public bathroom? Like, full stop. But here's the thing. If your establishment has single stall, single use restrooms and they're gendered, that can really raise up anxiety for us because we're getting a look. Oh, why are they going into the men's room? They don't look like a man. Why are they going into the women's room? They don't look like a woman. Those restrooms can just be restrooms. You can just have signs on the outside that say bathroom. And that just makes it a lot easier for us. Well, we're not worried about how people are perceiving us. If you have a single use bathroom that has a urinal inside of it, you can actually just put an image that has a urinal symbol on it so people know in case they want to use a urinal or in case they want to avoid it. So you can use imagery to let people know what's inside that restroom, just like we do if it's ADA compliant, right? Also in these bathrooms, what's really great is that we provide changing tables in all bathrooms. We provide tampons in all bathrooms. We provide small waste receptacles in all restrooms, even in the men's room, if they're a multi-gendered or a multi-stall gender-specific restroom. Why? Well, some transgender men still have cycles, right? So they still need access to those things. So this is just something to think about. Again, we can get more in depth about this, but where you have those single-use stalls, please make them neutral so it's easier for us to navigate. If you have those restrooms in your facility and it's a large facility, know where they are, right? And when you're onboarding people, not just if somebody looks trans or, is kind of androgynous, you're going to tell them where those are, but make it a part of your onboarding to say multi-stall restrooms are on the 3rd floor and single stall restrooms are on the 1st floor, just letting everybody know, because you can never tell what somebody might need just by how we look. That's what we want to check in on, right? We really encourage you to think about when you are able to do business, you're able to contract out with somebody else for your screen printing, for your landscaping. We are encouraging you to look for those small businesses that are veteran-owned, woman-owned, minority-owned, and LGBT-owned. There's different certifications. You can partner with area chambers of commerce and business centers like the President's Council's African American Chamber up in Cleveland, Hispanic Business Center, obviously Plexus. When you're looking to spend and support diversely, right? It makes a huge difference for us, and it's a really important way that we can build our referral networks. Review your forms and applications for inclusivity. Do you have gendered language that you don't need? Are you asking about a mom and a dad instead of a parent 1, parent 2, or guardians? Are you asking about spouses in gendered ways when you don't need to? There's a lot more that we can get into on forms around how to include checkboxes that might make it more likely that you're going to know more about me, but there can still be some hesitation. Like if you ask me if I'm a member of the LGBTQ community, I really want to check that box. But some of my friends, they might be hesitant because they're like, well, why do you want to know? And what are you going to do? And without having those full protections, it's still really risky for us to be answering those questions, even though we want you to collect that data. Just really quickly looking at HR and employee benefits. Make sure that your benefits are inclusive of families. Looking for that gendered language again, right? Another insightful thing to think about are your leave benefits. Um, like I always think about bereavement. Bereavement policies can be tricky anyways. You get 3 days for immediate family, 1 day for friends or non-immediate family. It's important to keep in mind that in the LGBTQ community, we have this concept of chosen family because for many of us, when we come out, when we live as our whole selves, when we transition, we lose our relationship with our family of origin. So my mom and dad might not support me, but I have this other person over here who's technically a friend who is my mom, who is my aunt, right? That's that chosen family. So for me, my persons are Jim and Cheryl Keene. They're just friends. They're my college professors. When they pass, like it always makes me choke up when I say this, I'm going to need 3 days. I'm going to take all those 3 days. When my father passes, I'm good. I could take one, right? I don't have that close relationship with my biological father, in part because of who I am. I don't have that relationship. So we can be responsive when we're thinking about chosen family, and we can include that language within there. You want to remove exclusions in employee health benefits. Again, this is a big deep dive. But for instance, say you have health benefits that provide paid leave for adoptive families or fertility treatments. Many times your insurance carrier might, or your benefits might say, those fertility treatments are only available for a heterosexual couple. I have a Plexus member right now that is working really hard so that she and her wife can access the fertility treatments that are available, amazing within the insurance policy, but they have to renegotiate. She's having to have her employer renegotiate those benefits so they're available for them as a same gender couple. So kind of get into that when you're looking at your benefits. There's other things around affirming care. What affirming care can look like, especially for trans folks, is access to hormone treatment, that therapy is covered, maybe voice lessons are covered, all of these different kinds of things that have affirming care. We're talking about affirming care, we're meaning being able to get medical care that helps us align our lived reality of who we are, sense of self with our body. So that's a much deeper, longer conversation. We're really encouraging you to provide domestic partner benefits. What we saw in the business community was before marriage equality was law of the land, domestic partner benefits was one of the ways that you could do that because you were making it possible for my wife and I in our where we were married in upstate New York, but not in Ohio, you were able to recognize our relationship and allow me to put her on my insurance. Well, when marriage equality came, we saw a drop of those domestic partner benefits. We're really encouraging you to add those back in. One, it's good for everybody. It acknowledges that people form lasting, meaningful partnerships with others, and that might not involve marriage, regardless of gender identity. So this is a useful way to provide a better safety net, and any increased cost is usually nominal. Again, expanding that definition of family leave time and be conscious of those gendered language. Let me look a little bit where we're at on time. Okay. So some basics about workplace culture. If you are doing surveys, if you're checking in with your employees about how they feel, you can ask questions. You know, how inclusive do you feel like we are to the LGBTQ community? If you are a member of the LGBTQ community, how comfortable do you feel bringing your whole self to work? You can analyze and put different questions in there that are looking for safety, job security, or instances of discrimination. We don't want to put the burden of making inclusion or diversity and equity on the people who are carrying the burden of possible discrimination, but depending on it, you can focus group it. It really depends. Like if I was your employee, I would say, yeah, absolutely, run these questions by me, let me take a look, let me give you some feedback. But you want to acknowledge, you want to ask people first, would you like to take a look at this? I know you're a member of the community. I know this might be important for you because of how you've spoken up or your leadership. Could you take some time? But acknowledge that when we are doing the work of helping to create equity and inclusion, and we're a member of a marginalized or discriminated against group, that's work we're doing on top of the work that we're already doing. That's that rumination, that's showing up, that's taking time maybe when we're at home. It might take us away from answering emails. So you could also think, as you're involving your employees in the equity work, how do you make that easier for me? right? How do you shift my workload if I'm really involved in a big project around maybe reviewing benefits? How do you provide me additional time off days if I'm stepping up in leadership, kind of volunteering around this? We encourage you to express your commitment externally as affirming or allied businesses. Area pride festivals are a wonderful way to go, but also you can think about how you show up all year long. If you have social media channels and you're telling the stories about how your mission impacts elders, well, can you include some facts and figures about the unique discrimination or ways that you're showing up for LGBTQ elders? Um, do you have LGBTQ employees that can write a blog or a LinkedIn or that you can do a spotlight on? We are often looking for visual cues. This is why when you join Plexus as a chamber of commerce, many chambers of commerce use decals. That's a great way to show membership. You know, ours has a rainbow on it because I'm looking for rainbows, y'all. Like I am looking for the codes to know if I can be here, you know? You also want to make sure the work that you're doing, you make it easy to find on your website. If you have employee resource groups, if you are doing pride celebrations, if you have really inclusive healthcare benefits, if I'm looking to work with you, make sure that it's easy for me to find that. Celebrate the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that you're doing across the board and across all different identities. Um, you know, if you're doing equity and inclusion trainings as a regular part of your onboarding and orientation, when we're talking about racial justice or unconscious bias or microaggressions, LGBTQ is also a part of that. You know, there are Black LGBTQ folks, there are Black trans women, and the dual reality of racism, of sexism, of homophobia, and transphobia, that is a real thing. My whiteness gives me a whole privilege that my BIPOC friends in the LGBTQ community don't have. So look in the way that you can just always be including LGBTQ, even in the language. If you're a larger organization, you're able to invest in an office of equity or a chief equity officer in addition to your generalized HR. That's a wonderful investment. And of course, supporting employee resource groups, which is an area that we have a lot of work within at Plexus, just so you know that we're a resource there. Your talent acquisition. How are you going to find me? Say you're doing all this internal work. Your culture is great. You have inclusive time off benefits. You survey your LGBTQ employees and they're like, this is amazing. I totally want to work here forever. Well, how are you finding me? It's important to actively recruit candidates that are in places that are welcoming to the LGBTQ community. So reaching out to your LGBTQ organizations, Plexus, your LGBT centers. A part of our membership at Plexus does include a job board. This is a benefit to our members. You have to be a member to post on here. The reason for that, I need to have a little bit of vetting, right? I need to know that you're doing one step around inclusion, which means joining your Chamber of Commerce. But this is the main reason that people stumble upon my page when I look at my Google Analytics. They're searching for diverse employers, LGBTQ, Cleveland, Kent, Northeast Ohio. Again, if you are able to adopt procedures that are supportive of gender transition, this is a kind of multifaceted step and process. If you do have those, again, make that easy for me to find on your webpage. Internally, promoting mentorship programs are good for everybody. It's especially good for any group of employees that might be marginalized and haven't had the opportunity for leadership and support or experiencing bias and discrimination in our workplaces. Also, like I said, we want to see you. So there's ways that you can show allyship or a sense of belonging with having Pride Zoom backgrounds, with having allyship pins or I am an ally. This is from the Speak Out Foundation. These are downloadable resources that you could put on your desktop and things of that nature. We want to be mindful of rainbow washing or performative allyship. So you got to do the deeper work, but I'm looking for these kinds of things, right? Okay. How's everyone doing? Give me some reactions, some thumbs up. I hope that you're well. I'm talking pretty quick up here or over here. I'm going to shift us now into some very specific work around using inclusive language. Where we can, when we're communicating, drop gendered language from our communication in full, ways that we can introduce or add our pronouns to our signature lines, and how we can be mindful of not assuming people's gender, aka through using certain pronouns. So I share this photo of my family from 2015 for two reasons. One thing that's really important is that, again, all this progress that we've had, when we are surveying the younger generation, these emerging professionals, young professionals, we are finding that 41% of young professionals report that they go back into the closet when getting these first jobs or when making major career moves. This can also be true for elders. So that might mean that they dress differently, right? This might mean that they don't share openly about their partnership status, or that they're a member of the community. And so this also means that it's more likely that that young talent that you want to nurture, you want to grow within your organization is going to be likely to leave, unless you're doing that work of being inclusive. And that was my experience right out of grad school, right around this time. The other reason that I share it is my wife, Erin, like I said, looks really differently than me. And so not only are we, the same, we're lesbians, we're cisgender, we're both white, we're even in similar fields. I have privileges because of how I move through the space. When we are in public and there's a public restroom at a restaurant or at a rest stop or a gas station, seldom does Erin go to the bathroom on her own. And like, what 50-something-year-old person wants to like have somebody go to the bathroom with them? You're not a child. But the reason for that is I keep an eye out to make sure that people aren't uncomfortable with her being there. They're not mistaking her for a man and making an assumption that she's in the wrong place. They're not calling security, or they're not saying something to her. This has all happened to us. We've had security called. We've gotten into verbal, almost physical altercations with people, and we've just felt really, really unsafe. And this is increasing again because there's a lot of legislation that's making it dangerous or impossible for people to go to the bathrooms that are common sense for them. But the other way that this manifests for my wife is when you're greeting her as a new client at the doctor's office, at Starbucks, oftentimes she gets served where I do not, right? Oftentimes people will say, well, what does he want? What would you like, sir? Whereas I do not. And that's because we are wired, unfortunately, around this binary that there's man and woman. Men look this way, women look this way, and that's it. And so we make really quick assumptions. You look at me with my, my hair length, my earrings, and my name is Amanda, and you guess that my pronouns are she, her, or that I'm a woman. And you get it right all the time. I'm never misgendered the way that my wife is, but you're still guessing because I can look like this. My name can be Amanda, and I could use neutral pronouns like they, them. I could use masculine pronouns. I could identify as a man and still dress feminine. It takes some rewiring because it's really deep rewired, but this is why we want to slow down and not assume somebody's pronouns. So when I introduce myself with my pronouns, I'm not doing that because you're likely to get it wrong. I'm doing that to make it easier for you. I'm doing that as a way to help us slow down and not make the assumption about what people's pronouns are. I'm hoping when I do that in every single meeting, every single presentation that I give, that for somebody like Erin, who's often misgendered is when the wrong pronouns are used, it makes it easier for her to also then share her pronouns, and we're going to be more likely to get it right. Also, it can create an opportunity that if somebody's changing their pronouns because they are understanding their gender identity differently than how they've been living or how you have known them to be, that when I share it, it might make it easier for them to say, hey, my pronouns are he, him, even if before you knew them as she, her, or my pronouns are they, them. It can help us slow down and avoid assumptions about pronouns. When it's in our signature line, it's on our business card, we're not having to guess and get it wrong, right? It does show allyship and awareness. Now, if you don't have your pronouns in your signature line or you don't introduce yourself, I'm not like, oh, they're a total homophobe. Like, I'm not thinking that at all. But when you do use it, then I'm like, okay, they're thinking about gender. They know that this is a pathway to making sure that we can all be here. They know that this is a way to increase communication. And again, it's important to remember that pronouns are as important as your name. It's literally replacing my name. Instead of saying Amanda went to the store and Amanda bought a pair of shoes and Amanda, maxed out her credit card on some Louis Vuittons. No, I haven't done that, but you're able to say Amanda went to the store and she bought a pair of shoes and right? It's just it's a effective way of communication. So when you get it wrong, it can make me feel as invisible, disregarded, and disrespected as if you're getting my name wrong. And that's another area of allyship. You know, for me as an English only speaking white person, unfortunately, as a white person, there are language, there are letters that go together, there are names that are not as nuanced to my ear, that I'm more likely to make a mistake on for a lot of different reasons. It's my job to get it right. It's not my right to give somebody a nickname or say, oh, I'm never going to get that right, or stumble over it over and over. It's my job to practice and to remember. I only get so many chances to mess that up, because how does that make you feel when I do it? Okay, so use they until you know someone's pronouns. And I know that they is also a plural, but it's also a singular. So this is how we do it. We're at a networking event and I want you to introduce me to somebody across the room. And instead of assuming based on how they dress that they use he or she pronouns, I can say, hey, do you know them? Can you introduce me to them? Do you know that person over there with the blue blazer and the stripes? I'd really like to meet them. That's it. Maybe you know them really well, and then you're going to use their pronouns, or you're going to tell me their name, and then I'm able to take that cue. And then there we go, right? If we're in a Zoom meeting, especially, and like here, I don't know you all. Maybe you don't, not all of you have your pronouns in your signature line. I like something you said. I can use your name. Can we go back to what Justin shared, right? I really want them to talk more about that. See, it's neutral. I practice using it for people that are familiar to me. So you can practice using they in general as your first go-to by when you're watching your favorite show, using it that way. So if I was going to talk about The Office, because I'm obsessed, and I know, and you know, that Angela is a woman and uses she, her pronouns, and Dwight is a man, uses he, him. But I could say, I can't believe Angela cheated on them. I can't believe they did that to Dwight, right? I'm just rewiring it. And this can be important, especially as we work with people or we know people who may change their gender identity and expression. They may come into a new understanding of themselves and express that outward. So that's going to be hard. If I have friends that I have known with a different name and different pronouns, and I can still make that mistake because my brain remembers them that way. And that's especially true if there are family members, especially if there are children, right? So remove that gender language where you can, and you can practice in that way. Mistakes are absolutely going to happen. Mistakes happen a lot of things when we're talking about expanding our worldview, you know? So the most important thing is to acknowledge, validate, and appreciate. So if someone corrects me on their pronouns, or maybe I used an outdated word, maybe I made a joke or asked them a question, and this is outside of just LGBTQ, that was insensitive. What I want to do is not say, oh, I didn't mean it that way. Oh, that's not what I meant. Does it matter what I meant? Do my intentions matter in that moment? They don't. What matters is this person's uncomfortable. They feel unsafe. They feel hurt. They feel disrespected. That harm is what matters. So I need to acknowledge it. You know, thank you for telling me. I'm going to work to do better. You know, I really appreciate it. We're going to do that work. Now, how do we do that work? Depending on the relationship, you could circle back around, right? If I have a really close working relationship, I might give it a couple of days. I might email or text or ask you in person, say, I really appreciated what you shared with me. I hadn't thought about it like that before. I'm learning and thinking a lot about this. If you have resources or anything you think I should listen to or watch, if you send them to me, I'll do it. I'm not saying, hey, can you talk to me more about this? Can you teach me about it? I'm saying, thank you again. I'm doing the work. If you have anything you want to send my way, I'll look at it, right? It opens it up. It doesn't put the burden on them as much. Also, here's the thing in the LGBTQ community, language evolves. So you got to be patient. You got to be curious. You got to remember that whatever I might tell you around the language that we use, an individual person might understand it differently. And the thing is, in our human culture, a part of our evolution has been around words and meaning making. Words change over time, right? Words that were derogatory, a group can take back, like the word queer. Queer is still a slur. It can still be said against me in a negative way. But for me, it feels really super inclusive. That's not true for everybody in the LGBTQ community, but I have reclaimed it and other people have too. The other thing that evolves is like with Latino, Latinx was originally about 5 years ago, one of the ways in which we saw folks creating a neutral term, right? Not Latina or Latino. Well, what I was hearing from my friends within the Latin community, the Hispanic community, was that that felt like whitewashing, that felt like colonization, that felt like an undermining of language and culture. And so what I'm seeing a movement towards now is Latin instead of Latinx, but I'm still seeing it mixed up within there. I said that they, them are neutral pronouns that non-binary folks might use, or gender expansive people or anybody can really use they, them pronouns. We also have neo pronouns like they and zir and za. I think we're going to start to see this maybe in the next decade or so from a younger generation using this. We call them neo pronouns because they're new pronouns. They've been around since the 90s. They just didn't get picked up as much by mainstream folks because it was like too hard to learn. But we're also hearing that same thing around they, them. So right now we're mostly seeing they, them, but they, zir, are also these neo pronouns that we have in our culture and language. People can use multiple pronouns. Somebody can say, yeah, I use she and they pronouns. You can ask that person, is there one that you prefer over the other? If I see someone that's using she or they or he and they, I tend to use they, right? And then I listen for how they might address themselves. I also know folks that, really prefer they, but maybe when they're on client meetings or when they're in certain spaces where they're not so sure how people are going to be with a neutral or an expansive term, they revert and use he to navigate that space. So it just really can matter. And then other terms that we use around non-binary or transgender is gender expansive or gender queer. These are other terms that you might hear. This is on the slide here that you will get some different ways that we can be gender neutral. The main thing that this means when we get more inclusive is we actually get to be more creative. Hi superstars, hello everybody, hi dream team. Even if, like, I worked in an organization that was all assumed to be women identified people, and a lot of times emails would be like, hi ladies. I didn't like that. I just didn't like it for a full stop. I don't really like that term ladies. It doesn't make me feel included. But the other thing that it does is maybe somebody doesn't identify as a lady. Maybe we're making an assumption about their gender identity. Maybe they're understanding internally their gender identity differently. And if I keep on saying hi ladies as a way to say, hey, we're a team, we all belong here, I might be shutting down that person from thinking that they can actually transition here and let me know that they identify as a transgender man. When we're greeting people and we're doing public things, let's really stay away from ladies and gentlemen. Again, ladies does not have the same level of kind of respect on it or agency or power as gentlemen, just doesn't. And if we're only saying ladies and gentlemen, what about people that don't identify within ladies or gentlemen boxes? So thanks, friends. Hello, distinguished guests. And the public and public service, people often get worried about saying sir or ma'am and not. I'll tell you, I would rather you say, how can I get you all something? How is everyone doing today? Instead of making the mistake for that one person or a couple of different people. All right. I'm going to look here in the chat. I see I have some things that are coming in here. And take a moment. Yep. Okay, I hear you there. Yep. I love that, Justin. Thanks for sharing that about, a few years ago, you had shop, you added name tags with pronouns for our shop plans. Yeah, just kind of made it more familiar and natural. Yep, Tiffany, really great there. Someone did the craziest thing the other day. Odds are they responded, really, what did they do? Yeah, we use it in that neutral word. Marquise, of course, and sometimes we might know already that, like, it's cool. Like we've established this norm around hi ladies, hello folks, hi girls. And so we just want to kind of check that and pay attention to if we're doing that in a place where it's understood and we're good to go, or where we're doing that all the time. So Andra, to the thing around they, them, I just use those examples there. One of the examples I use is when somebody cuts me off, aside from the expletives that are totally gender inclusive that I shout out at them when they're driving like a unhinged person on the highway. Usually you're saying, I can't believe that person cut me off. Look how they're driving. Can you believe they are driving like that? So you can use that example. Sometimes when we're talking about groups and stuff, it can get confusing, but there's ways to navigate it. All right. So this is just our general allyship in action that we've been kind of going through. And I want to make sure that you all have my contact information as I try to get you out of class on time. You can scan my QR code there. It'll give you all of our handles, our webpage, my personal contact information. Would love for you to do that. This is a really nice app that lets you save my contact immediately. You can email me back. We really use our Facebook to try and bring you along in this journey. We're a membership organization, but everybody is invited to get in and fit in. So on Facebook is where you're going to find all of our events that are going on, our Instagram stories. I share everything. Anybody that's hiring that's a Plexus member, everything that's LGBTQ, useful things, silly things, it's all in our stories there. Our next upcoming event is actually on October 26th at Northside Market, one of our newest Plexus members over there in Akron. We're really, really excited to be over there. So October 26th will be our fall network night. It's free for Plexus members. It's only $10 for non-members. But I tell everybody I like to reduce barriers. So if ever cost is a barrier for you to get in where you fit in with Plexus, you just shoot me an email or a text and let me know that. Hold that in confidence and we'll register you on our back end. But I will stop. I'm going to stop recording here so that if you'd like to come off of mute and ask a question, you are able to. So I just got to find that. Okay.